The ultimate paradox. Jiu-Jitsu is one of the best things for our mental health. However, it is one of the worst things for our physical health, in particular our joints. If there is one thing that is absolutely certain, it's that us as grapplers are going to get injured at some point. Now, what we do, the immediate point after the injury happens, is so important. Especially if we want to do jiu-jitsu beyond getting a black belt for the rest of our lives. So, what I'm going to be talking about in this video is 10 of the most common Brazilian jiu-jitsu injuries, and I'm actually going to order them in order of severity. Basically, how quick the recovery timeline is, right? So, before I even start, I just need to, if there's one thing, only one thing that you take from this video, right, it is this. If you could literally, I'm going to talk about injuries, I'm going to talk about different exercises and concepts and mindsets that you should be having at certain parts of the injury rehab process for different injuries. But if there's one thing that, if nothing else you took away from this video, it was this, I'd be very happy. I would be over the moon, right? It is high blood flow means high recovery speed. However, the cost of that is high blood flow is high pain. Do not run from pain, run towards it, essentially. So, high blood flow, painful, fast recovery. Because blood flow is nutrients to the injured area. For example, the MCL and mid-substance muscle fibers. Low blood flow areas that don't really hurt that much. They're just a little, it's like that weird ache. Is the false sense of security. Goes often untreat, unstrengthened for years. And it's just a matter of blood flow. Now, what is the first thing that most men do when they get injured? They look for things that reduce their blood flow, reduce their body's natural healing. So if there's nothing else you take away from this video, it is that you should not be avoiding blood flow. You should, if you feel pain, be very happy with the body's natural healing processes and do absolutely nothing to slow that down. If anything, try and accelerate that with structured, effective strength training. Right, in order for me to give you the timelines on this video of different injuries, I have to make a few assumptions. I have to make assumptions, for example, that you have high personal standards. You are a man that looks to the future with optimism and confidence without making excuses. I have to assume that you sleep like a baby most nights. I have to assume that you are eating nutrient-dense foods, not eating absolute shit. I have to assume that you are not bouncing around different types of medication, TRT, weed, alcohol, all sorts of chemicals and anti-inflammatories. I have to assume that strength training is already a priority in your life. For those that are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Paul Green. I'm a former British paratrooper, Special Forces Support Group operator, and I've coached elite soldiers for the best part of 10 years. Now I've built something special called the Longevity Program, in which I work with men of all different shapes and sizes, from all different injury backgrounds. But for the most part, because I'm a grappler myself, I generally attract grapplers with injuries. I'm also a purple belt. I've got 7 years of experience. So I'm speaking from experience from a logical standpoint and an emotional standpoint with all of these videos in which I post every single day on YouTube. Anyway, get a sense of how I do business, and the link is in the description if you want to book on a call with me to discuss the Longevity Program, which is a one-to-one coaching service where I help you throughout this whole process in my unique way. Right. Injury number one, the least severe. MCL, inside heel hook, knee reaping, where the inside of your knee is going to go. It's either going to be a minor ping, it's going to be a major pop, or it's going to be a full rupture. and it's going to be excruciatingly painful, right? However, linking to what I was saying earlier on, excruciatingly painful just means there has been a sudden rush of swelling because of blood flow to that area. That is a good thing. Yes, of course, pain is perceived to be a bad thing. However, it is an absolutely great thing that your body has an ability, especially with a ligament, to turn on maximum blood flow within seconds, right? Because that swelling is going to help the injury heal really quickly. Now, with the MCL, an inside heel hook, if the inside heel hook was to only damage the MCL, the turnaround varies from 1-2 weeks up to 12 weeks maximum, even for a full rupture. And a rupture is full tear of the ligament, literally full tear, right? So worst case scenario, it's going to take 3 months. But remember the assumptions that I made earlier on. I'm assuming that you are doing the right things off the mats, which, let's be honest, we know most people aren't. And that is a sad state of affairs, right? However, the reason the MCL is one of the best recovered, one of the fastest recovery ligaments is just because of the amount of blood flow that it has. So every time I'm talking about different injuries, always think in the back of your head, the reason it's recovering quickly or it's taking longer is because of the amount of blood flow. Yes, we can do tricks in the gym to increase blood flow, to strengthen the area, to really get laser focused, and that's exactly what I do on my program. But there's general rules as well, right? For the most part, blood flow is required for areas of the body that, moves a lot, and low blood flow areas is where the area is required to be rigid and like really strict and really strong, really rigid, right? So you'll see that. One thing on severity as well. Usually you're going to get the doctors and the physios and the stuff like that. They're going to start saying grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, right? Basically, grade 3, for the most part, means surgery is required. Grade 1 and 2, you can literally do the assumptions in which I said, and all of these you can absolutely recover from. Just like the examples that I showed in my program. That's what I do. That's what I do for a living, and I've got loads of proof to show that. The next one, injury 2, mid-substance muscle strain. Now, this actually isn't really a mid-substance. What I mean by mid-substance is right in the middle of the muscle belly, far away from the tendons and the joints and the bones, right? So, like here, right in the middle of the muscle, could be the lat, could be the calf, could be the hamstring, right? Basically, when your muscle just goes pop a little bit and it's like shit, ooh, and there's an instantaneous feeling of shit, something's happened there. Could be any muscle, right? But the common offenders are the hamstring, especially with judo throws and stuff like that. Let's say, for example, electric chair position, all that type of stuff, where your hamstring isn't flexible enough or isn't strong enough at that end range in order to cope with that demand. Anyway, you should be happy when you realise where the injury is. If it's in the middle of the muscle belly, you should be very happy with your luck. Count your lucky stars, because that is a good thing. Where it becomes a bit more of a problem is when it starts to get closer to the tendon. So now this is starting to be called an end substance muscle tear, right? And for example, if it's down here, it's going to be a bit more problematic because the blood flow. See the picture is red. Red means high blood flow. White means low blood flow. So you've got all of these things going on. And like I said, for example, if it was behind the knee, it was hamstring, but it was behind the knee. That's where the hamstring muscles connect to the joint. That's where the blood flow is reduced. Or if the hamstring muscle was high up, closer to the glute muscle, it's where it starts to reduce in blood flow because it's now connective tissue. Do you know what I mean? It's the job of that part of the muscle isn't as, it doesn't need to be, moving much. It needs to be really strong to create that strong connection. But with that, the blood flow gets turned off a little bit, meaning longer recovery time. So the mid-substance muscle strain, you're talking, you know, for mild, grade 1, grade 2, you know, 2 to 3 weeks, then a little bit longer than that, 4 to 6 weeks for grade 2, and then grade 3, you're looking at multiple months, right? And that's because of, think about all of these fibers here. If all of them were torn, which is a complete rare scenario, you're talking, this rarely ever happens on the mat. It's virtually impossible to happen on the mats. But let's say it did, you would have to have a period after surgery, because grade 3, 95% of the time grade 3 requires surgery. If all of these muscles were torn, all of these muscle fibers were torn, you'd have to have a period of being completely immobile to allow the fibers just to reattach a little bit, and then you would start strength training from a very low level, and you progress it all. So doable job, you know, but grade 3, where most of the fibers are torn, is going to be a bit more of a problem. For example, let's say a realistic example of this in jiu-jitsu would probably be a bicep, you know, off an armbar. If the bicep was fully torn off a fucking disgusting armbar that you didn't tap to, where the bicep maybe come off the shoulder, or the bicep, you know, at the elbow joint is flipped off there, it'd need surgery. You'd need to be immobile for a little while, you know, maybe a month, and then you'd start your strength training from there. The next one, ankle ligament. Obviously, I'm mentioning severe scenarios there, but for the most part, they will follow this order. Ankle ligament, we've all had them. We've all had ankle sprains where we start to get a little bit of coloration on our ankle. Remember, the coloration is blood flow. It's sore. It's painful. This is a good thing. In the jiu-jitsu language, we've got the toe holds, the footlocks maybe that bring this on the top. But for the most part, these are going to be pretty quick turnaround, right? You know, gym stuff, it's going to be like balance exercises, standing on one leg just to create that instability, standing on one leg with, you know, maybe an offset balance under your foot, maybe wearing really cushiony trainers to create that, just to create that stimulus to really accelerate the blood flow. Remember, the goal should be the strategic acceleration and improvement of blood flow and nutrients to the injured area, not reducing it, right? You're going to start to feel my common theme when you start watching my videos, especially this one in particular. This is my bread and butter, right? So ankle ligament, quick turnaround. Again, 1 to 8 weeks. However, when this becomes a serious one, a grade 3, again, very rare. However, this can definitely happen with, you know, very well applied heel hooks, very disgustingly applied toe holds, where there can be some severe ruptures of multiple ligaments of the foot. This ends up being, because the foot has about 20 or 30 bones in each foot, they've got loads of different ligaments and loads of little tiny muscles. When these start to get snapped, it can cause a huge problem, right? It means that someone needs to go in and tidy it all up. The surgeon needs to go in and tidy it all up, and then you need to build yourself back up, and it's going to take months. It's going to take, could even take up to 6 months. It's going to take a while. And ankle injuries, but just because of the complexity and how small and microscopic all of these bones and ligaments are, that's why it can be complicated if you're not like all over your rehab. Next one, elbow. So your arm bars. Surprisingly, this is nowhere near as bad as most people think. However, like I'm talking specifically about the elbow ligaments here. So it's you've got your MCL, your medial collateral ligament of the elbow, and you've got the LCL, lateral collateral ligament of the elbow, and you've got like a couple of other ligaments as well. But the byproducts of a fucking brutally applied armbar, hyperextension, basically elbow hyperextension. Your elbow overextends, basically going shit. The ligaments go shit, because that's their job. The ligament's job is to restrict movement of the joint. If the joint goes too far because of jiu-jitsu, then obviously there is tears to the ligaments, if you know, unlucky. But happy days, injury number 4, it actually doesn't take that long, right? But the grade 3 is the one that takes long. It's where you need surgery. However, it's not just about the ligaments, because the ligaments themselves actually won't take that long, because they have a pretty reasonable amount of blood flow. What actually will cause the serious drama is, like I said earlier on, where it starts to become, the muscles end up fucking getting ripped off bones and stuff like that. Proper awful shit. So again, that's ticking over to the 6-month mark with the grade 3 stuff. But when I say grade 3, it's extremely rare that people have grade 3 tears, because most people have grade 1, grade 2 tears and do nothing about them. Grade 3 tears are usually, holy fucking shit, this needs to be sorted, because I can't even live my life. I can't even make a cup of coffee. I can't even go to work. So, unfortunately, men wait until the grade 3 stuff happens in order for them to do anything and to make them assumptions that you should be doing off the mats. It's a terrible reality. The next one, injury number 5, LCL strain. So this is your outside heel hook, and the reason this one takes longer than the MCL is just because of blood flow. The LCL is a really low blood flow ligament, and again, with high blood flow, there's high pain, so there's the high action threshold. You're going to literally go and actually train, and you're going to do the chair sit holds, or you're going to do some 90-degree squats to start developing the strength. You're going to do that. But with the low blood flow areas, there's not much pain, so there's not much want to fix anything or to strengthen anything, because you don't actually think that's that bad. So it's a false sense of security. So high blood flow, high pain. Low blood flow, low pain, false sense of security. So there's a lot of psychological things going on which can hold you back massively with regards to how you overcome these issues. So yeah, LCL strain, obviously the immediate one is the outside heel hook. However, we're all tapping to outside heel hooks, so a realistic scenario would be maybe a bit of stand-up where you've had to step and change direction quickly. Another one, which is my own experience, a bit of a lousy berimbolo attempt where my training partner just literally sprawled all of his weight out, and a lot of force went through my foot, on the outside of my foot, leaving my knee. Take the outside of my knee, take all of that brunt, and it just popped. The outside of my knee popped. Didn't really hurt that much. I felt, oh shit, that was a bit weird. Little bit of pain, but for the most part, I knew straight away. Not much pain, and just off being on the outside of my knee, like at the outside, I mean the furthest part away from my centre line, I knew straight away LCL or meniscus. Meniscus is usually a hell of a lot more painful than the LCL, and I came to the conclusion that it's LCL. One thing I will say with the LCL, and I will say about the MCL. MCL is like an ankle strain of the knee, right? If you restore range of motion, do some quad exercises, do some full range of motion hamstring exercises, start squatting, start improving the range of motion of the squat, you will recover this, really fast for the MCL. It's exactly the same process for the LCL. All it is basically training your legs. It's training your legs to a very good standard, right? However, to add an extra month on at the end of the LCL stuff, if it's a bit more severe, you need to start strategically putting some horizontal forces through the knee, but only do that after you've built good, solid foundations of knee strength, right? And that's called shearing forces in the nerdy physio world. So yeah, LCL, outside heel hook, however, just make sure you tap so it doesn't happen. However, again, the complexities of jiu-jitsu, these things do happen randomly, and we can't control that, unfortunately. We just can control what we do afterwards. Injury number 6 is PCL. This is knee hyperextension. This is knee bars. This is maybe getting stack passed. This is maybe getting, again, crazy positions, judo, try to trip you over. Your leg was planted. It's hyperextended your knee, right? This is, again, the process for this is exactly the same as the PCL. It's exactly the same as the MCL. It's all about increasing full range of motion of the knee joint, extension, flexion, adding load, squatting with your heels elevated, building up full range of motion, knee bend, strength, leg press, Bulgarian split squats, all of these staple exercises that are already part of your training program. However, again, the PCL, similar to the LCL, but in all these cases, all these ligaments, their job is to restrict movement. However, jiu-jitsu, your training partner is trying to disturb that. They're trying to not restrict movement. They're trying to put their bodies into positions in which they create movement in parts of your body that is supposed to be restricted movement. So it's inevitable, right, that these things happen. But similar timeline to the last one with the LCL and the PCL. However, with the PCL stuff, you're going to have to target hamstring specific stuff in the near term. Yeah, prioritize hamstring. Injury number 7, meniscus. Oh, brutal one, right? The reason the meniscus is so brutal, you've got meniscuses, and the meniscus is called the shock absorber of the knee. And one of the reasons this is so frustrating for blokes is that it'll feel alright for months, and then they'll just sneeze in the kitchen, and then all of a sudden there'll be 9 out of 10 pain, or they'll slip in the kitchen and there'll be 9 out of 10 pain. The reason this happens, and the reason this is so misleading, is because the meniscus is the shock absorber of the knee. Now, it doesn't necessarily get aggravated when you're in the gym lifting weights with good stability, with good technique. It doesn't really get aggravated. So you're led to believe that your knee is actually healing and it's sorted. But the reason it would get aggravated is if you suddenly increased force through the knee, right? Because it's that shock absorber. However, one thing that's very important, like exactly with every other knee injury, is that you need to have that solid foundation of build-up. Then the end phase stuff, you start adding shock. So you'll start your jumping, you'll start agility training, you'll start plyometrics, you'll start building up to running again. So with a shock going through the knee. But yeah, most of your quality of life will be returned in the short term through cycling, but then you need to start building knee strength, right? You can do this from walking backwards on a treadmill, you can do this on mini single leg squats, but like I said earlier on, the problem with the meniscus is that it feels great for weeks or even months, and then something will just cause a 9 out of 10 pain. Do not let this mislead you. Make sure that you are taking the necessary steps to absolutely nail this, because it won't go away. It won't go away, and you'll be stuck with this for years. Injury number 8. Mad that most people don't tap to these things. These are brutal. External rotator cuff tear. The most common injury I've actually helped people with in 2025 is internal and external rotator cuff. Grapplers specifically, right? And again, common theme, blood flow. Remember what I said about blood flow. The Americana isn't the most painful submission. It is one that we will fight tooth and nail again, and we will actually let our training partner get pretty far into an Americana. But if they actually were, or it was a competition, and they actually did the business and caused a rotator cuff tear because of the low blood flow of the external rotator cuff group, Jesus Christ, going to cause a lot of drama. However, it's not going to cause you ridiculous excruciating pain. It's going to massively affect your quality of life. You're going to constantly have a dull ache. It's going to be tossing and turning in bed, struggling to be comfortable in bed, massively affecting your sleep quality. And the main thing is it's going to take a while to recover from, because the development of your strength in a low blood flow area, it's going to take some time, right? But it can be done, right? And I've done it with loads of guys last year with the shoulder stuff. So it's not just about strengthening one function of the shoulder. So the shoulder obviously rotates like this. The humerus bone rotates. It rotates from multiple different elbow positions, and that's usually the pathway. However, if that's going to cause excruciating pain, if you've got a really bad external rotator cuff tear, that is going to cause pain. Just rotating your humerus bone out is going to cause pain. In the short term, what you need to do is potentially break up the movement. So for example, if the movement itself through a full range of motion hurts, then you're going to have to just do an isometric hold, just like you would do in jiu-jitsu. You know, if you can't do a certain technique, you're going to break it up into 3 or 4 steps to make sure that you can build up the necessary technical pathway, so then you can execute the full technique, you know, after some practice. Same as this. However, this is technically a hell of a lot easier than jiu-jitsu, but this is very necessary for your development through, these brutal injuries. Because one of the things I see with this is, because it doesn't hurt that much, people leave it. And I'm not saying that you've got an external rotator cuff tear from an Americana, by the way. You might have got it from working in construction. You might have just had it for years. It's just one of them things that doesn't bother you that much. It only bothers you a few times during the day that you haven't acted on. And it's not inevitable. It's not just the way it is. It's not because of age. It's because you have lowered your personal standards. External rotator cuff tear. Sometimes it's mild. It can take a few weeks. And then when it gets bad, it can take up to 6 months to return to full function. However, this is the most common one that I've seen left untreated. Next one is internal rotator cuff. A little bit worse. This is the Kimura one, but the one that sits right on the front of the shoulder, right in this bit area here. Similar sort of timeline to the external rotator cuff, but this one hurts more. So it's an horrible, ugly feeling when you're rotating in. It's awful. I've had this a few times when I was really young playing sports, but like I say with any of these injuries, right? The bigger the timeline, the more you can focus on other stuff as well, because if this is the problem with the current physiotherapy world, the current physical therapy world, and when you go to them for a specific problem, they will give you a specific solution. They won't treat you like a human, and they won't go, well, why when you're working on that, why don't you also work on this and this and this, and maybe lose some body fat? So then you're like, okay, it becomes a full mission, a well-rounded, plan that you actually develop a lot of different areas in your life in this timeline. So what I always say, right, and this is how I'm literally practicing what I preach here. When I'm coaching the guys with these injuries, we zoom in for the first, month or two, 2 months. We really zoom in on these areas, and this is a clear priority in their programming. It might be isometric holds, it might be eccentrics, it might be resistance band. It's a priority. However, it's not the full part of their program. They're still training their legs. They're still eating nutrient-dense foods. They're still sleeping really well. Do you know what I mean? And then once the pain goes, we then zoom out, and then we start strengthening other functions of the shoulder with priority. So we're building not just the shoulder function that causes the pain, the internal rotation. We're actually building the rest of the shoulder. Then we're doing the shoulder press when that's pain-free. We're doing chest pressing when that's pain-free. Do you know what I mean? So laser focus, and this is where people get it so wrong, is that they run away from doing things that bring on a little bit of pain. We go into it, we move towards it very sensibly. Injury number 10, the last one on the list, is the ACL. The ACL is the main stabilizing ligament for the knee. Literally kind of keeps the knee in the right place. So when this goes, like when this is ruptured, your knee can either track left, right, forward and back with a lot more likelihood. It's awful, right? But one of the misleading things about the ACL is that it doesn't actually cause that much pain. It just gives you that sense of instability of the knee, and it's an awful feeling. But this is the thing with jiu-jitsu. You don't have to stand up. You don't have to engage with stand-up and wrestling. So you could just sit down, and you might not actually think that a torn ACL is actually that bad until you're walking down the stairs, until you're getting in and out of a car, until you're working. So a lot of people think ACL is overrated. The ACL, just like the rest of the ligaments in the knee, need to be built a solid foundation of increasing strength of range of motion, increasing range of motion pain-free, increasing the strength of that full range of motion, increasing resilience, and then we start to do crazy stuff like plyometrics, jumping, sprinting, agility, maybe a walk to run program as well. But if it's fully ruptured, it's going to be a drama. However, mostly it's going to take something really, really bad to cause the full rupture, and it's usually a byproduct of a very well applied heel hook that you've maybe try to escape the wrong way out of. When you've got a huge timeline in front of you, take that as an opportunity to literally focus not just on that area, focus on the rest of the system as well. Because why wouldn't you? It's going to take a while. Happy days, right? Okay, there's nothing I can do about this. I can use this moment as a really, really, really important time of my life. Use the injury as a catalyst to develop your personal standards. Gentlemen, this leaves you with a choice, right? And most men choose the choice on the left. This is most grapplers, and I call it the creature mindset. They don't even believe the injury's even there. They believe that it's age. They believe that it's just the way it is. It's just the martial art. They're constantly bouncing around from different quick fix methods, different hacks, different methods of pain management, up and down mental health, endless trials of different tactics, different exercises, endless trials of going to see different experts, acupuncture, massages, and basically living every day in survival mode. And then you've got the elite mindset, is somebody that uses this as a moment just to pause and go, you know what, this is the way it is. Yes, I'm going to absolutely prioritize the development of the strength and capacity of that area, but I'm going to use this as an opportunity to develop the strength and capacity of every fucking other area of my life as well. Nutrient dense foods, quality sleep, strength training, cardiovascular training, losing body fat. And the start of that journey was any of these injuries. That is exactly what I do on the longevity program.